This is my last presentation for my system security 2 class. This is a class I take at Kennesaw State, and this is a presentation. This is gonna be about a vulnerability assessment I had to do on 2 servers that we created. One was a Linux server and the other was a Windows server. We had to configure things like SMTP, SMTPS, HTTPS, Postgres SQL, DNS, and many other things on these servers. Alright, so my executive summary, this is just a summary of that me like elevator pitching to a business if I were to have done this for some business. So this assessment aimed to identify potential vulnerabilities within the servers with the internet protocol addresses 192.168.2.125 and 192.168.2.126. These IP addresses were scanned on April 16th of the year 2024, and I will now provide concise overview of the findings, their criticality, offer technical recommendations for each issue, and summarize the overall state of security maintained by my servers or these servers. After thorough deliberation and extensive research and careful consideration, it has been determined that the 2 servers have an overall risk level classified as medium by the Greenbone scans and map scans that I've done and got a report off of. Okay, this next part will be clearly about vulnerabilities. So during my vulnerability scan, I examined these 2 servers that I configured to provide web, database, and mail services. Across these servers, a total of 3 vulnerabilities were identified, or findings, however you want to say it. While these vulnerabilities were not deemed high or critical, they still obviously require remediation. On the Linux server, on my Linux server, one medium risk vulnerability. I had one medium risk vulnerability and one low risk vulnerability according to the scan, the Greenbone scan. The server hosts secure shell connections, mail, domain name service, and database services for that server specifically. A low-risk vulnerability related to the transmission control protocol timestamps was identified. And finally, one vulnerability was detected on port 5432 concerning the database communication ciphers. On the second server, which also hosted Secure Shell Connection or SSH, mail, and DNS services, had one medium risk vulnerability and was identified on the web server. This vulnerability relates to the secure sockets layer, or what we now call it, the transport layer security, SSL and TLS cipher configuration. So after reviewing the Greenbone report findings, I conducted a comprehensive analysis of the common vulnerability scoring system risk scores, or CVSS. Prior to remediation, the servers exhibited a moderate level of security with approximately 5 vulnerabilities. However, after implementing the remediation process outlined, the CVSS score is expected to decrease from 5.0 to 0.0. This signifies a significant improvement in overall security posture of the servers. So for one of the two servers, for the Linux server that had the one low security risk, it had to do with TCPM timestamps, while the other had to do with weak cipher suites. So basically, I was using an old cipher suite that had the TLS and or the SSL or TLS encryption on it was already known how to break through it in many different ways. So that's why it was deemed as weak, because I didn't have the most up to date or the strongest SSL or TLS description, the TLS encryption, sorry, TLS encryption on it. And also for the Linux server, I also had a similar score a similar thing that had to do with the same encryption of the cipher suites, but this one pertained more to the mail server. But it was still a database because it used the port 5432, and that it wasn't secure on that line. It was a level of encryption that wasn't up to date. But while the servers are now considered safe, it is imperative that the remediation process be completed before they can be utilized further in any capacity. The reason why you want to have these vulnerabilities, remediated is obvious, because you don't want any hacker to hack in with these known vulnerabilities on these cipher suites that aren't strong. So that's why you would want to remediate them so hackers can't get into your system. But this this whole project in the end was very interesting because I have never set up my own server before. I've done like Python coding, but that's not setting up a server, then running a scan, then fixing a scan, or there was times where I actually had to have my teacher delete my whole server and reset it so I can actually make it work, because I had done some stupid stuff during the coding and whatnot. But this is basically the end of my vulnerability assessment presentation. This was an interesting class that I had to take. I hope I don't have to retake it again, but I might. But in the end, it was a good class. I'm kind of upset I couldn't take it sooner, because, it would have been better not to, well, have, not to have, but it would have been better to have taken this class earlier when, like, my, knowledge of coding and making web servers and anything was low, rather than my senior year when I'm about to graduate. But anywho, thank you for coming. I'm going to read these references and then I'll get out of here. So these are my references for it. I have 4 of them here, of like where I just got some of my information from. So the first one is obviously an introduction to cipher suites, as we said. The next one will be how to generate a self-signed SSL certificate on Linux. This is to help remediate those TLS encryptions that weren't, up to snuff, why the cipher suites weren't secure. This is how TCP works. So this was for the one on, I believe it was my Linux server that wasn't as strong. That is how you actually get rid of the TCP timestamps and change them to where it's secure now. And then the last one is a complete guide to the common vulnerability scoring system. So the CVSS that I mentioned prior, that is the website that explains it in depth on how to how you're supposed to read and interpret the results that they give you. Thank you for your time and have a good day.